Welcome to the Pretty Sister Podcast. I'm your host, Callie Stoyer, and I'm so happy you're here today. We are going to talk about some fun things. This is the episode where we will discuss Chapter 2 of Think Pretty. And this is really great because this is all about you and your uniqueness. In case you just haven't been told recently how unique you are, that is what we're going to talk about and discover today. I want to start by sharing a story with you. When I had my kids, my philosophy was when I'm going to be in the trenches, I just wanted to be in the trenches. I just was going to have all these kids all in a row so I could get them there and just go through this hard phase of life all at once. So I had 5 kids in a little over 7 years. So it was crazy, just truly a crazy time of life for me. Because of that, I had to establish some routines and some systems that would support my sanity, I guess you could say. And one of those was that my husband would often do the bedtime routine, or at least assist me with it. And while I was working with the youngers, the little babies, he would be putting to bed my older kids. He was great at story times, and he would tell these outlandish stories to Taylor as he's putting her to bed, and she would just get involved in that storytelling. They would create these stories together, and she would give him prompts, and they would create these fantastical tales as they did this bedtime routine. Well, it was interesting to watch as she developed and grew up. She really became a storyteller herself. And she loved, as soon as she was old enough, to start writing these stories down. And then they would become these elaborate stories that they would continue not just at bedtime, but they would on a road trip or when we're driving places, they would be talking about pieces and parts of the story. And she would just always have her pen and paper and she'd be writing these stories down. And as soon as she learned how to type, she had a computer that then she started typing up these stories and she began writing a book. She wanted to publish a book, and she had this desire from a pretty young age. I remember so many times we'd be driving in the car and storytelling and everyone's inputting, this character should do this and this should do that and this is how the plot should go. And it was almost like a family pastime that we'd all be contributing ideas to her novel. Well, a terrible thing happened and her computer crashed and she lost the novel that she'd been working so hard on. And she was devastated about this. And we worked and worked and we couldn't get it back. And it was gone. Around the same time, we moved for our family from Maine to Utah. So it was a big life transition. And she kind of threw herself into making friends and navigating that big transition, which in some ways wasn't going as well as she thought. And so time went past. I said to her, "Are you going to start writing your book again?" She finally decided, yeah, I'm going to throw myself into the book. And that sort of alleviated some of the pain of maybe not having as many friends as easily and as quickly as she wanted during the move. But she picked up her laptop again and she started writing the book. And the idea that, well, you wrote it once, it'll be easier to write the second time. She begins writing again and completes her goal of publishing a novel by the time she graduated from high school. Her goal was to publish her novel by 18 years old, which she did. We were so proud of her. It was amazing. We had this author that had been, she was born and cultivated this talent over time, and she reached this goal of publishing the book. It turns out that Taylor had the gift of writing. That was a unique gift that she has and a passion that she has. And even though that book is imperfect in many ways, it was written, at a fairly young age, she kind of now, with some time that has gone by, shudders a little bit thinking, oh, that writing is so immature, and she wants to write a second novel. But she did it. She did it. She wrote it. She completed it. She finished it. And that was such an important skill that she has, and that we saw it in her. And as I sit, and the reason I'm telling you this and think about that, how wonderful that we did see that in her and cultivate that over a period of time as she was younger. And I think so much of her identity and feeling like she's an author and feeling the courage and the confidence to publish was because of her family supporting her, of her parents telling her, "Great job, you're a storyteller, you can do this." And that helped her to see the gift inside of her. And that is often what happens with all of us. We, in many cases, have a hard time identifying and understanding our unique gifts and talents. And it often takes somebody else who knows us, who loves us, who sees us, to be able to help say, hey, you're this, or you do that well. And then we sit and think, oh, you're right. I guess I do, or I am. And that is what the power of compliments can do for you. And one thing that we can do as Pretty Sisters, as we build and find a supportive community around us and build friendships, is we can generously give compliments and help recognize those gifts and talents in other people. Years ago, when we first started Pretty Sisters back in 2006, one of the first things we did is we had an annual cruise, this Pretty Sister cruise. And as part of it, we wanted every woman to come on this cruise and just feel very special. We wanted them to understand their unique gifts and talents. And we wanted them to see that about themselves and really feel who they are. As part of doing that, we thought, well, who knows these people the best? And they would be the best ones to help identify the very special, unique qualities about them. So we asked either their significant other or their partner, somebody close to them, to write a tribute letter to that woman that she would open on the cruise, with this idea in mind that when we're complimented, when somebody really recognizes us for our talents and our gifts, that it helps us to see and become more of who we are supposed to be, and to be better primed to cultivate those gifts. And it turns out we were right. It was absolutely magical. One of the most memorable things was when each woman opened that tribute letter and when they read about their gifts, their qualities, which is what we asked them to write about, to express appreciation and gratitude for those. And it just brought many women to tears. And we also distilled out of those letters just 1, 2, or 3 words about, just to kind of sum up some of the really special qualities about each woman. And they were crowned, as we did our ritual activity, the Pretty Sister of fantastical fun, or the Pretty Sister of kindness or service, or whatever word combination really exemplified who they were. And here's what's amazing as I ponder and look back on that experience, is when you assign some words, some attributes to a person, they lean in, they see themselves as that. They take on those qualities more, and they want to become more like that. And it's such a gift that we can give each other as we pay attention and work to help others to see themselves in the way that we see them, and want to bring light and attention to those qualities. So it was a beautiful part of the cruise, and it's a beautiful part of Pretty Sisters. The other thing that we did, and I'm going to I'm going to explain it to you, and if you're watching this, you'll be able to see it, but we have the symbol of a crown as a divine symbol that helps recognize who you are. You're the divinity inside of you. So when we do read the pledge, which we have a Pretty Sister pledge, I'm going to read this to you. We have each woman put a crown on, and we read the pledge, and they, pledge to be a Pretty Sister and repeat the words after us. And it's a fun ritual that also involves, at the end of reading it, just a couple of spins, and we have sprinkling fairy dust that we sprinkle on, and shimmy while you turn, and then do a little kiss on each side of the cheek, just to make it a fun ritual. But here's what the pledge says. I am a Pretty Sister. I dare to dream. I believe in me. I know who I am. My crown reminds me. I am a princess of divine heritage. I am an expression of beauty, joy, and love. I discover my dreams. My dream dust empowers me. My purpose is grand, my potential limitless. I will create my dreams. My Pretty Sisters assist me. I will find the path and create the way. I have gifts and talents. I will use them for good. I give my best. I deserve the best. I see the good in others and the good in me. I give. I can also forgive. I can make a mistake. I am love in motion. I radiate a beauty deep within. I am the joy the world is waiting for. I will embrace my life and live each day to the fullest. I am a pretty sister. Don't you just love that? It just fills you up with so much belief in yourself. And hopefully just the beginning of the understanding of how absolutely unique and special you are. And that's what I want each pretty sister to truly realize. And again, it was such a fun part of our annual Pretty Sisters cruise was hearing these tributes, taking the pledge, and being part of this sisterhood in a unforgettable, fabulous way. Now, that is the problem though, is we do often forget how fabulous we are. And it's because of a couple of factors. I mean, there's many factors that go into it, but if you think about it, we all have unconscious competencies, these abilities that we're born with that just become easy for you because they're your natural gifts and talents. And that's a good thing because that helps you to fulfill your purpose in an easy way because you're just going about life doing things the way you do them. And so you just think, this isn't hard, this is just how I do things. But because it's an unconscious competence, what you're missing is that it's actually a special attribute that maybe only you can do, and something that is easy for you to do may not be easy for somebody else. And that's again why we can often forget or not even realize these gifts and talents and why we need to help each other. Another thing that we often do is part of this problem of not recognizing how unique we are is we have this little tendency that women have, men and women, but especially I think women, of comparing ourselves to others, of looking at somebody else and the things that they're doing and comparing ourselves against that, and then feeling like we come up short. When really, instead of comparing, if we could just realize that we all have special and different, varying gifts and talents. And so it's not apples to apples. We shouldn't compare ourselves to others. It's better to work and think collaboratively with others because what I might be good at, somebody else isn't, but somebody else is going to be better at doing something than me. And as we work together, as we have these friendships and come together in a sisterhood where we recognize each other's gifts and talents, then we amplify one another. We rise up together, and together the whole becomes greater than the sum of the parts. And so that's the second thing that we need to do is stop this competitive thinking and think more collaboratively instead. Now, the next thing that is a tendency that takes away from our uniqueness is we will often shrink in front of others or have a false sense of humility, not wanting to make maybe somebody else feel bad. And so we'll have this tendency to kind of play small or not want to draw attention. And there's some parts of that I think the idea of being humble, we'll talk ourselves into that's okay. But truly, we are meant to shine, to let our light shine brightly and to really help and be a light to others. And in doing so, we can fulfill our purpose more fully. We can accomplish what it is that we're meant to accomplish. So we need to stop shrinking in the presence of others and instead approach life in a way that we have permission to shine. But to do that, you really have to come to understand at a deep level your own specialness, your uniqueness, what makes you you, and learn to celebrate that, to be proud of that, to know that about yourself so that you'll want to cultivate it and use your own gifts and use your own talents to help and to bless other people. How do you really come to love and appreciate what makes you you? And the first part of that is you've got to discover it. You've got to want to, discover what those gifts and talents are. And there's a lot of different tools and methods out there that you can do. Strength Finders is one that I absolutely love that helps you identify your special, unique gifts and talents. But, when I was younger, I struggled with this actually, even though I was surrounded by so much love by my older sisters and my mother, and, always being told complimentary things. At a deep down level, I felt like I didn't understand what really were my gifts. And it's funny because I really wanted the gift of being able to sing. I grew up in a family of singers where we would gather together on Sunday nights and play around the piano. My cousin Steve would play songs and his siblings would sing, and my grandmother played the piano by ear and she could sing and perform. And there's all these amazing external talents that I admired. I loved. I would sit and just love to listen to them sing, and I wished that I had the talent of singing. And I would sometimes think I got skipped over by the talents because I didn't have one that was seemingly outward like that. I couldn't sing. And I felt bad about that. I really did. And it was later in life, at the end of my high school experience, where I had this revelatory blessing that talked about some of the special gifts that were mine. That was a recorded and written down beautiful thing that I treasure, that I have to this day, that I will go back and reread on a monthly basis and really try to understand and appreciate those gifts and talents that I was told that I had, because they weren't outward ones, but I've had to study and really try to understand my gifts. And one of them is the gift of cheerfulness. And at the time I was like, okay, that's not singing. I will not be a rock star with that. And I didn't appreciate it. But as I've aged and as I've gone through life, the gift of cheerfulness is amazing. And it's really a reason why I wrote this book and why I am doing this podcast and sharing with you all, my pretty sisters, is because I do have this gift of cheerfulness. I'm naturally pretty happy most of the time. Even though life might be hard, or I might have a setback, or I have bad days, just like we all do, I do have a natural ability to be able to reset and to keep my normal state a state of happiness. And it's a gift I want to share with you. It's things that I've had to recognize that not everyone feels this way. And that, yeah, it is something special that I have, and that if I can just figure out how to teach it and articulate it so that I can share some of these tips, that maybe others can be more cheerful too. Maybe I can uplift, and maybe I can inspire, and maybe I can say something that will be helpful. But see, it's taken me a lot of time to know that and see that in myself, because to me, I just thought that's how everybody felt, when it really isn't. And I know that you have very similar qualities too. That if you'll stop and think and ponder and maybe ask your children or ask your friends, that you also have some very special, unique talents that are just naturally the way you are. And that you can bless other people by sharing those. That you can show up shining so brightly, sharing your light, stepping more into that, cultivating it. It's discovering it, cultivating, developing over time, so that you can really help others. And if you're still trying to figure out what it is that makes you tick, and what it is that is your purpose, and how you can become more of what you're supposed to become, one of the great ways to help you do that is to serve. Because as you reach out to others and try to help others, you'll naturally do it in a way that utilizes the gifts and talents that are yours. And if you'll do that and pay attention to how you do it, and recognize that your natural tendencies to help others are exactly you using and utilizing the very gifts that you need to fulfill your purpose. Pay attention to it, because it's very enlightening to help you identify more of how you're supposed to show up and become. An example of this was also years ago in college, actually. We had thrown a party with some of my close girlfriends at my friend Katie's home. It was her parents' home, where she grew up. And it was this beautiful mansion. It was just this gorgeous home. It was very kind of them to let us throw this party. And we were there at the house, and different kids, had heard about it and come. And I was on the stairwell. I remember specifically where I was when these kids were talking about this amazing, beautiful home, which it was, and saying, oh, this is such a cool place. Like, I wonder whose house this is. I'd love to meet the host of this party. Who is it? And I was about to open my mouth and say, oh, it's Katie's house, because Katie was actually standing right there and she could overhear the conversation too. And before I could say anything, she jumped in and she just agreed with them in a very nonchalant way, saying, oh yeah, I bet that person's really cool. She deflected is what she was doing. She didn't want to take the credit, and she didn't feel the need to be seen as the person who had this really cool house. She had a very healthy perspective that this is my parents' house. This isn't making me particularly special or cool. But also what I recognized then, that's been a poignant lesson for me throughout my entire life, and I've tried to cultivate more of, is that she had this humility and this ability and desire to be very generous with everything that she has. And she's continued to show up and do that again and again. And I've seen that pattern. And the reason I'm telling you this is because that was something that she didn't even realize she was doing. Just being humble, being generous, wanting to share and help others and not need the credit for it. And I've pointed that out to her, and I've watched her cultivate it more and more, not just because I pointed it out to her, but I'd like to think that doing so helps her see herself as more of that. And over time, as she's shown up, and again, after lesson of the way that she just lives her life, and I've been able to witness it, it's helped me and inspired me in so many ways of wanting to be more like her, and wanting to be generous like her, and wanting to be humble like that, and not feeling like, oh, you need to flaunt or show off. You can just be quietly gracious and quietly humble. And it's something I've tried to emulate. So you see how we can help each other, that people are blessed with different gifts and talents. And as we get to see those, thank goodness that she showed that and that she's cultivated that, because I've learned so much. So I want each of you to take the time to discover your gifts and talents. When you do read chapter 2 of the book, I have a long list of possible attributes and talents for you to look through and read through and try to understand. But beyond even doing that, again, you could take the Strength Finders test, you can serve and just ponder. But I want you to really try to recognize them in yourself so that you can cultivate them and that you can develop them. And also, if you're mothering or in any relationship that you have, even with your friends, really try to see what your friends' gifts and talents are, what your children's are, what your spouses, what your partners are. Because as you see that in them and you compliment them and shine a light on it and tell them, you have the chance, the opportunity to really help other people show up the way that they are and to develop their gifts and talents. And it's something you don't want to pass by. I mean, thank goodness that when Taylor was young, that we saw that in her, that we talked to her about being an author, that we helped her to cultivate it, that we cheered her on. Could you imagine if we had said to her, oh, your stories are terrible. That's totally unrealistic. That would never happen. You know, that plot is ridiculous. Oh, you've got to do it this way. Or, you know, anything that we could have said to damage or to stop her from cultivating it. Of course we didn't do that. And of course you wouldn't do that either. She was adorable. She was doing her best. She was trying. And over time, she's become better. And that's how it works, because everyone has to start somewhere. But when we enjoy what we're doing and when we love it and recognize it, we will give it the time and attention it deserves and develop it over time. Now, I want to read to you a paragraph from chapter 2 of the book, and it says this: "It's much easier than you might think to forget how special we are. Knowing this to be true, you need to intentionally remind yourself to keep your gifts and talents at the forefront of your mind. This isn't arrogance, it's appreciation and gratitude for your God-given talents and abilities. Using, cultivating, and especially becoming your best self is the highest form of gratitude. It's always in the fulfillment of our purpose that we can do the most for the greatest number of people. It would be a shame if you didn't have enough belief in yourself to even try." So, I want you to stop criticizing yourself, stop comparing yourself to others, stop thinking or doing any negative self-talk that is possibly dampening your light, and instead really think through, how can I be respectful to myself? And that's such an important commitment that we can and should make to ourselves, is to be respectful. It's something that I learned from Johnny Covey in his book, 5 Habits to Lead from the Heart, where he asks you to keep this commitment of being respectful to yourself and to others. And as you do so, as you're respectful to yourself, you'll stop doing the negative self-talk. You'll stop shutting yourself down. You'll stop thinking that you can't do something. And you'll be more willing to cultivate your talents and to show up and to recognize who you are, how special you are, that you're unique, and that you have a purpose that only you can fulfill. So, as we wrap this up, pretty sister, I want you to know how grateful I am that you're here on this journey with me, that we're doing this podcast together and learning a little bit more of how we can think pretty step by step as we go through the chapters, because I believe in you. I believe that you can shine brightly, that you are unique, that you are special, and I want you to do that. So this week, stay pretty and believe in yourself, and I'll see you next week.